What happens when the most ruthless railway baron of the Gilded Age gets completely outsmarted by a fake British aristocrat? You get a massive heist, kidnap politicians, and a governor threatening to launch a full-scale military invasion of Canada. Welcome to Exhibit Absurd. Today, we are looking at a man whose real identity is still completely unknown to history, but who managed to orchestrate one of the most embarrassing and high-stakes frauds of the 19th century. Our absurd historical dispute begins in 1871, when a mysterious, incredibly well-dressed man arrived in Minnesota flashing a massive bankroll. He called himself Lord Gordon Gordon, claiming to be the direct heir to the Earl of Gordon. He told local authorities he was scouting a massive tract of land to buy for his overpopulated Scottish tenants. The local Minnesotans completely ate it up. And that is a massive understatement. High society treated him like absolute royalty. The big bosses of the Northern Pacific Railway were so eager to secure his business that they handed him his own private luxury train car to tour the state. He was showered with free land options, and local politicians threw extravagant banquets in his honor. Wealthy families practically tripped over themselves trying to introduce him to their eligible daughters, desperate to marry into British nobility. But Lord Gordon Gordon was no aristocrat. He was a master confidence man, and he had his eye set on a much, much bigger prize than Minnesota real estate. Gordon Gordon set his sights on Jay Gould, who was widely known as one of the most powerful and cutthroat railway robber barons of the Gilded Age. Now, to understand how insane this con was, you have to understand who Jay Gould was. This man was a corporate pirate. Just a few years earlier, during the infamous Erie War, Gould had literally printed illegal, watered-down stock certificates to completely bankrupt and defeat Cornelius Vanderbilt. Gould was a man who chewed up Wall Street titans for breakfast. And at the time, Gould was locked in another desperate, vicious fight to maintain control of the Erie Railway Company. By pretending to represent a group of wealthy European stockholders, our fake lord convinced Gould that he personally controlled over 600,000 shares of Erie stock. Gould was so desperate for those votes to secure his empire that he handed Gordon Gordon over $500,000 in cash and securities, nearly $1 million in some accounts, just as a token of good faith. To put that into perspective, $500,000 in 1871 is equivalent to over $13 million today. And $1 million? That's roughly $27 million handed over to a total stranger. The master pirate had just been completely out-pirated. It didn't take long for Gould to realize he had been completely conned. He believed the stocks he handed over were being held securely in escrow. Instead, Gordon Gordon immediately traveled to Philadelphia and dumped a massive block of the shares right onto the open market. The sudden sell-off was so huge that it actually depressed the railway's overall stock price. Gould investigated the sudden drop, traced the massive sale right back to his European partner, and realized he'd been played. He immediately sued for fraud and had the fake lord arrested in New York. But Gordon Gordon easily made bail, and he wasn't about to stick around for a verdict. He fled straight across the northern border to Fort Garry, Manitoba, Canada. Jay Gould, furious and humiliated, realized he couldn't legally secure extradition. So, he literally funded a team of American bounty hunters to cross the border and illegally kidnap the fake lord. Amazingly, this strike team included prominent local politicians, including 3 men who would later become members of Congress. The posse ambushed Gordon Gordon on a porch in Manitoba, bound his hands and feet, and tossed him into a wagon. They pushed the horses to the limit, speeding toward the American line, but the kidnapping plan failed spectacularly. Just before they could reach safety, Canadian customs agents and the Mounties intercepted the wagon. The Canadian authorities were absolutely furious at this blatant, arrogant violation of their national sovereignty. They freed the fake lord immediately and threw the American kidnappers straight into a Canadian prison, explicitly refusing them bail for attempting an illegal cross-border abduction. This left the American politicians stranded in a foreign jail, leading one of them to frantically wire back home, "I am in a hell of a fix." To make matters funnier, local Canadian townspeople reportedly gathered outside the jailhouse windows just to mock and taunt the high and mighty American politicians stuck behind bars. This botched kidnapping sparked a massive international incident. The Americans were outraged that their prominent citizens were sitting in a foreign prison. It escalated so quickly that the governor of Minnesota actually contemplated calling up the state militia and launching a full-scale military invasion of Canada just to break his men out. Thousands of Minnesota volunteers actually stepped forward, ready to march north over a petty con artist. Cooler heads eventually prevailed through intense, high-stakes diplomacy between the U.S., Canada, and Great Britain, and the kidnappers were finally released. But the global spotlight was now firmly fixed on Manitoba. British authorities started looking into this lord, and Canadian officials finally identified him as the exact same man who had swindled London jewelers out of £25,000 years earlier under the alias Lord Glencairn. In August 1874, Toronto authorities arrived at his boarding house with official deportation warrants. Gordon, who had previously vowed never to be taken alive, threw one final lavish farewell parties for his friends. He then asked to briefly step into his bedroom. With the authorities standing just outside the door, Gordon ensured he would never be captured, ending his own story entirely on his own terms. He left this world instantly, taking his true identity and the remains of his incredible stolen fortune to the grave. If you want to see more historical chaos and legal absurdity, hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. Your support really helps the channel grow. We'll see you next time for another bizarre case on Exhibit Absurd.